This video is going to be on the transmission. And if you're looking at the comments in any of these forums, you're either okay with it or you're almost to the level of hating this transmission. So today we're gonna talk about why Infiniti kept it around so long, and should you really hate it? Once you learn about this transmission, maybe you won't hate it so much, and then if you like it, you'll probably like it a little more. And what you're gonna find out is Infiniti was, in my opinion, I think they were kind of ahead of the curve on this one. And you'll see what I'm talking about later. And Infiniti, the transmission technology kind of came full circle right back in Infiniti's favor. So we'll talk about all that in this video. All right, I'm on my way to my proving grounds to give you a demonstration of the transmission in action. But before we do that, let's talk about history. So this transmission came out in late 2008 with the G37 coupes. If you brought like an early G37, 2008 G37 coupe, you would have still had the 5-speed transmission from the G35. But then the later ones, G37 coupes, and got the 7-speed. And then in 2009, when they released the new sedan, G37 sedan, it came with this transmission. Infiniti was, very happy about releasing this transmission. One of their statements was no slush box, and no more slush box. And that's what they declared when they released this transmission. And you can literally go find a press release of them actually using the term slush box, which is kind of funny. And what they did was, they, instead of doing a typical torque converter transmission, it's like a hybrid. It's like a torque converter with an actual clutch on the torque converter, so that you can get a physical connection to the transmission and not just a fluid pressure connection to the transmission. And that was supposed to give you the direct feel. And if you look at that old press release, they were squarely aiming at a manual replacement. They wanted to give you as much driving pleasure as a manual would. They even targeted the shift speed. For 10 years, they wanted, I think it was under a half a second shifts. That if you talking about DSG or PDK, I'm not saying DSG, I mean, yeah, that's right, for the Audis. And their shift times are more on the 200 milliseconds, or 100 milliseconds, where Infiniti was targeting under 500 milliseconds. And they, even in their press release, they talk about how, no professional driver can shift his car in under 500 milliseconds. So this car is shifting faster than you can with a manual. And they toted that, and it does. And it shifts faster than you can shift with a manual. Then if you go to something like any dual clutch, it's lightning fast on a dual clutch. So they were very proud of this transmission, and then they even tuned it to be pretty sporty. And then it kind of bit them. So Infiniti put this transmission out to the luxury customer and put this real sporty transmission, because this is a luxury sports sedan. and the customers got it, and the initial wave of people didn't really give it a good go. It was constantly people complaining, and to the Infiniti dealer that the transmission was too harsh or sluggish. And one of those problems was customer ignorance, and then the other problem was actually a software issue. So let's talk about the customer ignorance part. Whenever you slow down in this car, and it's in 2008, 2009 versions of the transmission, it would engine brake. And a lot of customers didn't know what the heck that was. They slowing down and filling the car engine brake. They were like afraid. They thought the transmission was braking because it was engine braking. So that got a whole bunch of initial complaints. And then the other side of it was the transmission didn't shift sometimes immediately when you expected it to. And to me, that was a legitimate complaint. So after hearing all these complaints for about a year, in 2010, they came out with the first software update. And the first software update, it took out engine braking when you're in regular drive, and only put engine braking in for drive sport. And so that alleviated the customer ignorance. So if you were just in regular drive, the transmission functioned pretty close to what just a normal torque converter transmission would do. Then if you put it in drive sport, it'll resume all the engine braking and stuff, which is cool. I think that's a good change. And, I guess you want relaxed driving, put it in D. You want to be a little more sporty, put it in DS. Cool. But they did not really alleviate. Oh, damn it. They did not really alleviate. Sorry, y'all. Forgot this turned into one lane road. But they did not really alleviate the gear hunting, is what people were saying. It was gear hunt. So if you're around, usually from my experience, I remember I got a brand new one in 2010, right before they did the update. So at around 40 miles per hour, it didn't know whether to be in second, third, or fourth. And it would kind of just hesitate. And a little insight on that is how much throttle you're giving it would determine if it was gonna, shift down or up. And around 40 miles per hour, it got 3 different options. And that would confuse the computer. So in 2012, they came out with another update to specifically for the gear hunting. And after that, the vast majority of people's concerns were alleviated with that 2012 update. And you still had some people that would complain that it, just wasn't shifting fast enough for them. But then you got to go back to where the transmission was designed for. It was designed for under a half a second, and it met that. But if you comparing it to dual clutch, it's slow compared to a dual clutch. I mean, that's all you can. Ain't no way around that. Then we hit 2014, 2015 with the Q50. And I remember driving the Q50 when it first came out, and one of the first things I noticed was just how much better the programming for the transmission was. It was just so much better compared to it was when I first got my G37, my 2010 G37 brand new. It was like leaps and bounds. I was just like, wow, this is nice. It pretty much did what I was expecting. Still wasn't the fastest shifting, but it dang sure wasn't slow. They've used this transmission. This transmission is pretty versatile. So the same transmission is in pretty much across Infinity's lineup if it had the VQ37 engine. They even put it in the QX56 or the QX80, has the same transmission in it, just a slightly different version of it, but it's the same transmission. And they give it just a little bit different program, and that was the whole point of this transmission, is that they wanted it to be versatile, so they can put it from their cars all the way up into their trucks, and small SUVs and medium-sized SUVs could have this transmission. And that's how this transmission ends up being a decade old. I mean, that's crazy. The transmission's been around for 10 years, but it had so much application power of when they designed it. Now, everybody, all the German cars were all going to dual clutch, while Infiniti stayed with their kind of hybrid clutched torque converter setup, and they just kept it. They stayed with the course. And now look what's happening. All the German cars are coming back to this same similar setup now. Which is crazy. So that's why I'm saying I think Infiniti was a little bit ahead of the curve, because they waited out for 10 years with their hybrid clutched torque converter transmission, while everybody else went to the dual clutches, and then now everybody's abandoning them now. You buy an M car, it got a ZF. You buy a Porsche, it got, well, PDK or some of the other Porsches got ZFs. So it's just funny. Those are all torque converted units. Now they are a little bit, more advanced than what the Infiniti has, with their shift times being still faster than what Infiniti's. It's not dramatic, but faster, noticeably faster, but it's still a torque converter unit with the clutch on it, so that it gets a direct connection. And Infiniti just stayed the course. They knew, just like if you look at my DAS video, they was doing DAS 10 years ago before they even launched it. So Infiniti is pretty good. I want to give them a kudos on product planning, because now they don't have to switch from some dual clutch and now have to redevelop another transmission again, which I know a lot of y'all probably would rather Infiniti do that, but they kept it. So all right, I'm almost to my spot where we're gonna test out this transmission. We'll get back with you on that one. All right, before we talk about how it works, let's just see it in action. See how the transmission handles. Shift the gear late. Not gonna go too fast, just fast enough. Decreasing radius. Woo. Another decreasing radius. Oh, look at this one. All right, that was fun. All right, let's talk about how this transmission works. You have a couple of different, I guess, functions going on in the transmission. You have line pressure control, shift change control. You got the unlocking and locking of the torque converter. That's where I have that outlined in red. That's where the magic happens to make this transmission not a slush box anymore. Then you have the adaptive shift control. And then you got Navi shift control or something different. And then, then a drive mode selector ties into all of that. All right, so as far as the line pressure control, it's exactly what it does. And it controls the line pressure for being able to, look at that deer. Wow. Wow. That's why I'm going slow. But you got line pressure control, and that's controlling the pressure to allow it to be able to shift the gears, controlling the pressure when you do engine braking, which everybody didn't really know what it was when it was happening when the transmission came out. You got and then it also controls the fluid depending on if you got your temperature. So if the oil temperature, the transmission oil's temperature is too low, it actually will do more, it'll add pressure to the system so that you can still get a shift. And this is, for people in cold weather probably notice this, because when you start up your car and you drive, you notice you get real clunky shifts when the transmission is cold. And that's actually being done on purpose, because when a fluid is cold, in order to pressurize it, you got to pressurize it more than when the fluid is hot. Then we have your shift change control, which controls the blipping. So blipping is the same thing as when you engine brake and then you need to blip the throttle. And or as manual people call it, heel and toe. So the transmission will actually send a signal to the engine computer and say, yo, we need to blip and get the RPMs up to such and such RPM, so that we can have a smooth upshift and a smooth downshift. Mostly on the downshifts though. Then you have the torque lock and unlock. It actually does, it has something called, smooth lockup. And so if you just pitter-pattering around, it's not going to lock the clutch hard. And it's going to try to do it as soft as possible to make it so the gear is almost imperceptible when you change. But when you driving a little harder, or driving hard, or you put it in sport mode, now it's going to lock it up quicker and faster, so you get that that bang when you shift. Then you have the adaptive shift control, and that's like if you're on a hill or going up and down a slope, it will add engine braking. At least if you're in drive, it'll try to engine brake a little bit for you, so that if you're going down the hill, or if you're going up a hill, it'll know to stay in a lower gear longer. And it's using your yaw and G sensor for that. And then something different, and I don't know if any other cars are doing, I never heard of it on another car, is Navi shift control. Where, like, you see me coming up on this curve right here, it'll know that I'm going on the curve, and it will automatically start engine braking before you turn. This is only in sport mode mostly though, but it'll automatically know I'm coming up on a turn, so I need to come down in gear. I don't know if you will get to see it in action, but because I'm not going this fast enough, but But that's what that does. And then you tie in the drive mode selector to, you know, control if it's going to use some sportier shift pattern or not, you know, or use your normal shift pattern depending on the thing. So this, and then this transmission also has like a learning type thing, and I don't know how much of the learning that they're doing now with the Q50s and Q60s, because I haven't really, the transmission's been pretty much the same. I haven't noticed it different. Well, let me get to what I'm talking about. Like in my G37, like say my wife got a heavier foot than me. So if my wife drove my car like for a day or so, when I got back in the car would be like amped up and be like shifting real fast and hard. And I already know, okay, yeah, my wife drove the car and she was on the gas. But in this car, I don't think it's doing that as hard. All the learning algorithm. Then also I was looking when I was doing my research. I didn't see that. I didn't really see the learning algorithm in it. So maybe they just making the transmission more static with the programming, and that's probably what made it more responsive, because that's probably was part of the problem, was doing too much learning and doing too much learning, making the transmission seem inconsistent. Because if you drove one way one day, you go, oh, he wants to drive aggressive, and then it's going to set it aggressive. And when you go back and drive soft the next day, it might be too aggressive, or then the next day when you want it aggressive, it's too soft. So I guess doing the drive mode selector kind of alleviates the learning algorithm that they did with the G37s. So all in all, I like the transmission. I've driven the dual clutch transmissions, and yes, they are lightning fast on shifting. But honestly, the shifting really only shines on a dual clutch is when you're downshifting. Because upshifting, this car is pretty fast on the upshift. It's not to me, it's not laggy. Now I can get ahead of it sometimes. You know, at least if you put it in drive, you can get ahead of it, and sometimes in sport mode you can get ahead of it. But when you're in manual mode, it pretty much does what I want. It may be a tad of lag every now and then. You know, if I'm going like up and down, then it might not like that. You know, if you're doing it like too quick too close to each other, it might not like me doing that. That's the only time I've noticed I could get it to really act up. But if it's some space between the gear shifts, then it pretty much does what I want and does what I'm thinking. And then even in leaving the car in regular drive and standard mode, at least for me, I cruise around in that, and I don't really have no complaint, just cruising around town. So I guess maybe I'm just used to it. But I have drove the dual clutch, and I was impressed by the downshift speed. But the upshift speed was just okay. You know, this is faster, but it wasn't dramatic. And then, you know, why everybody's coming back to the torque converter with a clutch kind of hybrid system is because of the smoothness, and then the NVH, the noise, vibration, and harshness. When I drove the dual clutch cars, how we just cruising and pitter-pattering around like here, it doesn't like that. Dual clutches don't like to just cruise like this, especially if you get into some stop and go traffic. It does not like that. And then you will get the harshness, and then you get a little extra vibration. And then once again, we talking about the luxury customer here. The luxury customer is going to complain. They're going to say the transmission is harsh. The transmission, you got up on a hill with a dual clutch, and then the car kind of went backwards a little bit before it went forward, because, you know, it was releasing the clutches and putting it in neutral. You know, because the dual clutch is constantly going in and out of neutral. So the luxury customer, sometimes don't know what they're asking for. You know, so they ask for a dual clutch, but do they really want to live day to day with that dual clutch? Because dual clutch is shine. When you push in the car, that's when the dual clutch shine. But when you just driving like I'm driving right here, not really. It's pointless to have the dual clutch. Especially, getting to my next topic, especially when you're talking about maintenance. So, dual clutch transmission, most of them need to be maintenance every 40 to 50,000 miles. And that maintenance is usually not cheap. And then most people are not going to do the maintenance themselves, so they're going to be paying that price. We talking about $500, $400 for transmission service. Where Infiniti, since day one, and you know, it's still hard for me to wrap my mind around this, but this transmission is maintenance free, meaning that the fluid is expected to not deteriorate enough over the lifetime of the car for the transmission not to shift correctly. And I can attest to that. My G37 I brought from brand new. I had it from 10 miles all the way up to 167,000 miles. I never once changed the fluid. Not one time. Transmission shifted faithfully for 8 years, and whoever got the car now after I sold it is probably still shifting for them too. So that maintenance free thing is real. I know a lot of people, don't believe that, blah, blah, blah. But remember, they warrantying the transmission with that maintenance free claim, at least up until 70,000 miles. So if you really think you need to change it at 60,000 miles, 70,000 miles, and never touch it again. And be done. If you really, feel so inclined. I personally didn't touch it. I never touched it on my G37. I'm not going to touch it on this car either. And I haven't touched it on my wife's QX56. She got the same transmission. Her car has a little over 100,000 miles on it. That transmission fluid has never been touched. Car shifts smoothly and faithfully, with towing and everything. We've been towing all types of stuff with that car, and shifts faithfully. So that's another big advantage of this transmission, and which allows you to get that 70,000 mile warranty on a luxury car. And you usually don't get that with a drivetrain on a luxury car. Your German cars, 50,000 miles, 40,000 miles on their drivetrain, and maybe 4 years. And on Infiniti, it's 6 years, 70,000 miles. And one of the reasons they can do that is because of this transmission. So I hope y'all enjoyed this video of the transmission. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and like the video, dislike the video. Just give me some comments. Let me know what you think. If you got any other questions about the transmission, I can most likely answer it, because I did a lot of research for this video, and I actually didn't cover everything just to compress the video. So, alright, till next time.